Exactly. Yes. Can I give you an illustration of that, of the concept of an inquisition taken from the Rio Earth Summit conference? It's interesting, Pat. I have in my hands a copy of a document. It was not 1992. This is a 1990 document. It was a Government of Manitoba report that came out through a conference held in Winnipeg. And it was one of the preparation conferences to the Rio Earth Summit. What a lot of people don't realize is that all of these major United Nations events have preparatory conferences and other events leading up to the main one. And it's these background events where they flesh out at sometimes a very, very brazen level what they would ultimately like to see happen at the big event down the road. Well, that's what this was in 1990, October 17th to the 20th. The event was known as the World Environment, Energy, and Economic Conference. And its theme, its official theme, was Sustainable Development Strategies and the New World Order. I kid you not. And so their document that was put out, and again, this is a government document, a provincial government document. About 3,000 world world leaders came, including, I believe, some from religions, but mostly from the political side, including Maurice Strong, who, as you know, was the Secretary General for the Rio Earth Conference in '92. In this document, that's a lot of lead up to it, I realize, but in this document, in Chapter 2, entitled Toward a Global Green Constitution, it says this. Again, this is the idea of that inquisition. The issues are not about if a global politics is necessary. The question is, how do we achieve binding agreements in law, complete with effective programs for applying sanctions against non-compliance that would oblige each nation, regardless of size, to abide by a set of principles that are required to guarantee the survival of life on this earth. That's a mouthful, I realize, but it goes on. Perhaps we will find that there is no other alternative to a system of rigid controls that some would equate to a police state. Unfortunately, in order to save the planet from biocide, there have to be very powerful constraints from doing the wrong things. The constraints must transcend national boundaries, be whirled around, and enforceable. There would be a need for an agency for preventing eco-vandals from acting unilaterally. Enforcement agencies would need the power to act without being invited by the offending nation. Therefore, there needs to be an agency that is acceptable to all nation states on the planet. We can probably accept the fact that there will always be one or more nations that will not go along, but there must be effective sanctions in place. If sanctions do not work, then physical occupation and the installation of a world trusteeship would be imposed upon the offending nations. Yikes! That's not the world I want to be a part of. Not at all.
For sure.
But that's language that says what we need is a world authority, and we will have inquisitions against anybody that opposes the world authority. And that particular chapter makes it very clear that this is about Mother Earth and Gaia, and referencing the Gaia hypothesis directly, that we are moving towards this concept of one world. And here's the political, powerful political expression of that. Now, obviously, this didn't come to pass, but it gives you a sense of that flavoring that was already undergirding some of the thinking behind the Rio Earth Summit and Agenda 21, because this was a preparatory conference to it.
That's really profound. And you know, we could skip back in history a little bit, even back to the 17th, 18th century, and look at some of the philosophical underpinnings of that might have led up to some of this stuff. And we see, at least I see, in terms of the United Nations and what they're doing with all these different programs, science has entered into religion in a major way. It seems like it's given justification for many of the conclusions that these people are putting forward. Like if they couldn't justify it in metaphysical terms, now they can justify it in scientific terms, even if it's pseudoscience. Is still, they consider it to be science. And back somewhere around 1800, a French philosopher, Henri de Saint-Simon. He wrote about scientism, and he said, "A scientist, my dear friends, is a man who foresees. It is because science provides the means to predict that it is useful, and the scientists are superior to all other men." And Saint-Simon went on to disciple many people, including Auguste Comte, who together promoted a priesthood, if you will, a scientist, to administer to society. And we kind of see a model of this merging today with this, not quasi, it's just outright religious movement, paganism, pantheism, under whatever name you put it, green faith. You see this priesthood has been established, and the what I want to say, the parishioners, the people of the world are just absolutely being forced to do whatever science says. That's a very convenient type of a dictatorship, isn't it? Where you can make science say whatever you want, and then now you have to go do that. But science hasn't necessarily said anything, but nevertheless, you have to go do that, or else, like as Al Gore says, we'll punish you.
I know. We really are entering a new religious era, and it's a religious era that combines the secular, the pagan, and why does this look so appealing? And why does this look so profoundly tantalizing to the world that we're living in? Because ultimately, this goes back to Genesis 3. We are taking control of our own future and our own destiny. We are turning our back on God, just like we did in Genesis 3. It's the same lie, the same deception that we see back in the garden, where God says to Adam and Adam and Eve, "Do not eat of the fruit." They do, and in so doing, they believe that they can become as God or become God-like through special knowledge. They have now their eyes have been opened. They have been enlightened, and the result of that obviously was death. Why was death the result? There's a logical conclusion to turning our backs against the author of life. When you turn your back against the one who created you, literally the author of life, the logical conclusion is death. And so what we've been doing ever since that time, Pat, is we've been repackaging the same thing. We've been repackaging that same belief that we can become through science, through our enlightenment, through our arts, through our culture, through our politics, through our religion, through our technology. We can become as God, and we can chart our own course in our own direction. And the end result of all of this always ends up in our demise. That's why we have things like even Bertrand Russell. Bertrand Russell, who was a famous British philosopher from the last century, in his book, The Future of Science, says this: "I believe that, owing to men's folly, a world government will only be established by force, and will therefore be at first cruel and despotic. But I believe that is necessary for the preservation of a scientific civilization, and that, if once realized, it will gradually give rise to other conditions of a tolerable existence." I mean, he's telling you right out, we need to have world government. It's going to be cruel. It's going to be tyrannical. But that's exactly what we need to ensure a scientific civilization. And then once a scientific civilization is in place, then maybe it can come around and become a little bit more cute and cuddly. But for the longest time, we have to have fangs on this beast.
It wouldn't be too much of a jump from where we are right now in our conversation to maybe go over and touch on transhumanism just a bit. And let me preface this way. We have a political party in America called the Transhumanist Party. This is new. This will be new to a lot of people, but you can go and look them up. It's called, on the web, it's called transhumanparty.org. And it's a legitimate registered political party in America, and they are running a man for president. They have a presidential candidate. His name is Zoltan Istvan, and he is promoting transhumanism as the answer to the political future. This is quite amazing. He's got a tour going where he's taken a, what do you call it, a motorhome, and he's converted the outside of the motorhome into a hearse. Not a hearse, a casket. It actually has flowers on top too, but it looks like a giant casket floating down the freeway. And he's stumping around America talking about using science to promote transhumanism to escape death. He's basically saying that you too can be immortal. If you, follow me and my transhuman party, we will conquer, through science, we will conquer death, and we'll all live happily ever after. Now, this guy is no joke. I mean, people laugh at this at first and say, oh, that's the funniest thing I ever heard. Well, you could read about him on Wired magazine. You can read about him in the Financial Times, the Huffington Post, the Daily Mail, the Telegraph, Business Insider, Esquire, BuzzFeed, Popular Science, Reason magazine. He's published articles or had articles published in all these different places. He's a graduate of Columbia University yet. And he's going wild, running around promoting transhumanism as the wave of the future, and he's trying to popularize the whole concept. Now, this has gone beyond just a parlor topic, where we just kind of talk about what the crazy people are doing out there, I guess. This has gone mainstream.
Right. And I know Zoltan has even has some critics within the transhumanist community, actually quite a few critics, because of the approach that Zoltan takes. I mean, driving around with a coffin bus, to me, is not exactly a way of winning votes. The symbolism and the message of the symbol says is vote for me and you will die. That's, kind of like, why would you vote for this? But let me go back. I had a chance to attend a transhumanist event in December. It was in Second Life, a virtual conference in a virtual world, and of course, virtual reality and Second Life. And Second Life is one of the more dominant virtual worlds out there. Is viewed as one of those milestones towards achieving transhumanism. And Zoltan was one of the speakers at this transhumanist conference. And Zoltan, as an atheist, because that's what he is, made some interesting points. He conceded that maybe there is a type of spirituality that we should be pursuing, and there is maybe a sense of something bigger than ourselves, a spiritual component. And he had told us that he had been spending time with some of the people from Teichrib, which is a trans religion built around transhumanism. And conceded to us that maybe we can form some type of resurrection through technology, and that maybe even the Christian eschatology, the ideas of revelation, we can maybe pursue and see this developing through our science and our technology. Maybe we can resurrect ourselves. We can create our own heaven on earth, and on he went. But what he was saying was interesting for myself, because I've intersected a lot with the transhumanist community, and for the longest time it was mostly a secularist, atheist pursuit. Now, it really has more of a spiritual component to it. It's a recognition that this is turning into a type of religion, that this is beyond just simply a secular movement. In fact, there's a number of religious personalities who are embracing transhumanism. When I was at the Parliament of World Religions in Salt Lake City, one of the workshops I went to was on the Divine Mother, and how the Divine Mother was going to expand herself in this new planetary age. And on at least two occasions, one of the panelists talked about this as being or entering into our transhuman period, our transhuman era, as we recognize now that we have this sense of loyalty back to the mother. And I'm like, that was an interesting word to use, because transhumanism is a technology-driven, science-driven